There were several players from the Dallas Cowboys that had strong first impressions in week one. We'll break it all down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are breaking down all of our notes after watching the All-22 film. But Landon, let's start with some first impressions from week one, because we had 5 rookies basically starting this game, including DeMarvion Overshown, who we're going to get into segment 2. Let's start in the offensive line, because you really need the All-22 before you judge offensive linemen. I want to start with Tyler Guyton. How do you think Guyton looked in his first start in the NFL?
It was certainly up and down. You know, I think this was look, I think we all had kind of the nightmare scenario in our head, right? Of what it would look like with a rookie offensive lineman facing, Myles Garrett. It's been a topic of conversation this entire offseason. So keeping that as the context that we've been discussing, it was very good. But I think if you're going over it with a microscope, if you're going over to look, how his technique was, he didn't grade out terribly well. It was a lot of kind of reverting back to bad habits. There were times when it felt like he wasn't patient with his punch, when he wasn't square with the pass rusher. It felt like the snaps that he wasn't going against Myles Garrett, that he had some really good snaps, right? And he did have some good snaps against Myles as well. But having said that, there was definitely a lot of the problem stuff that we saw on tape, before he had gotten a chance to kind of work with Duke and kind of even things out. And I want to be clear, like John Owning was tweeting about this yesterday, and I quote tweeted one of his tweets, and not that John wasn't saying anything other than this, but just to add a little extra context, that this is something that Guyton is currently working on, right? Like he is still in process and improving on this area, right? So I think that, there's going to be times when he takes a step forward and then a step back. And I think going up a level to regular season football against, an all world defensive end, it will cause you to revert back to some bad techniques. So there were times when it didn't look pretty. There were times when he was bending at the waist and having guys get around him. But having said all of that, I think it's hard to argue that the results were pretty good, right? That he battled very hard, and that even if the technique wasn't perfect at times, that for the most part, he got the job done. And the Cowboys were no worse for the wear for the kind of, individual technique stuff that he, had problems with time to time.
So I wanted to go back to a point that you made earlier, the disaster scenario where we've seen it before, right? Like the Chaz Green.
I mean, that's basically the scenario, right? Yeah.
I think I've gotten to a point with Dak Prescott and this coaching staff where that level of disaster just won't happen again.
Yeah.
I mean, because they've played now several games with Tyler Smith as a rookie left tackle, who really didn't practice there at all, and they survived that season, right? And that's with Cooper Rush playing a good chunk of that season. They've had Chuma Udoga on the left side before. I think Mike McCarthy, and you got to give Dak Prescott a lot of credit too.
Sure.
As he's aged and developed, he's just not going to let that impact him maybe as much as it would earlier in his career, right? So I just wanted to point that out. There was some growing pains for sure. I don't want to say that he had a good game, because I don't think he had a good game. I think he
survived.
Yeah, he survived. And that's for most tackles, not rookie tackles, for most tackles. That's kind of the bar when going up against Myles Garrett. Did you let him ruin the game? No. Okay, you survived. It's on to week 2.
And to your point, right? It's Mike McCarthy's job to make sure that he doesn't ruin the game, right? Like Guyton is going to do what he can to try to stop Myles Garrett, but and to your point even further, they did do the things you needed to do and to kind of keep that from happening, right? They did a lot of different things in protection. They had tight end help, they had chips, they were using boots, they were using sprint outs. They ran 5 different screen passes, which is a lot of screen passes for the Cowboys, right? So they were doing things to kind of help slow down this pass rush, kind of redirect things, getting the ball out quick. There was just sometimes that they had to use 5-man big on big protections. And when they did it, like, about 50% of the time, Garrett destroyed Guyton. But again, like, that's not unrealistic when you're talking about a one-on-one situation with, I guess, the best defensive player in football, maybe outside of one of the guys that we've got on our team.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Cooper Beebe, the Cowboys' other starting rookie offensive lineman from this game. I thought he performed much better. Now, his assignment was a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out something really quickly. I've seen some stats from PFF and from the ESPN's next gen, or I think it's the ESPN's pass rush win metrics.
Mm-hmm.
The show Cooper Beebe came out really well. I kind of don't think like pressures allowed and pass rush blocking is a great way to measure a center's performance.
Agreed.
Having said that, I thought Cooper Beebe played really well.
Yeah, I mean, look, you nailed it, right? Like, his assignment just isn't as difficult as what Guyton had to do on Sunday, right? Beyond the fact of who he was facing, who Guyton was facing, he also had, a surefire Hall of Famer to his right, and then a guy who looks to be well on his way, especially after this game. I was going to say
a surefire Hall of Famer and then the best guard in football next to him.
Yeah, that's fair, right? I mean, especially after this game, man, he was incredible, Tyler Smith.
Yeah.
But I think it is a little bit more of an easier task. But that also, we've seen what Biotish did at that spot last year with those same advantages, and I think that what you saw from Beebe was a guy with a stouter pocket at the front. He's more physical, it feels like, when he gets his hands on defenders. He definitely looked like a several year vet in there. But again, that's probably not that hard with like 2 of the very best players at their positions on the outside of you. So the bar for how we expected him to play was high, and he cleared it. So I think that's probably my review for Cooper Beebe.
Yeah, I just want to share a quick text that I got during the game. So my future brother-in-law does not watch football, but he's starting to immerse himself.
A little bit.
Okay. He's trying to become part of the family, right?
Yeah.
There was a report going into the game. I think it might have been Erin Andrews, where she said this is Cooper Beebe's first start at center at any level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my brother-in-law texted me and said, how is that possible that this is his first start? The Cowboys drafted him to play center. I'm like, kind of
I mean, like, you're not wrong, I guess.
it is kind of crazy. Like, this is the first time he's ever played that position to start a game. And for him to play that well, it's pretty encouraging.
I'll go one further. Think about where we were about how he was playing center a month ago, 3 weeks ago, right? Like, I came on this show and was like, I don't know that he's going to make it to be the starter in time for the regular season to start. And then since I said that, he heard it clearly, took it personally, and like really ground it down. And I mean, I don't want to take all the credit, but it was definitely my motivation that got him. Anyways, I just think that the last 3 weeks, he's gone from, okay, I think he's going to get it, but it may take a little bit longer than we expected, to, oh yeah, he's the starting center, and he looked great week 1. And that, kudos to him for kind of taking that on and really internalizing everything, and clearly getting it down to the point where, they were comfortable with all the things that Schwartz was doing. You didn't see a bunch of blown assignments.
No.
I think, but
so you had one miss, and it was from Zach Martin. It wasn't from Cooper Beebe.
Yeah,
that got drilled was from Zach.
But that wasn't an assignment miss. That was an old man who didn't look like he was quite ready for NFL football yet, I think, was what that was. So, but yeah, overall, I have to think, if we're grading these guys on their performances in the context of who they are and what they were doing, I give Guyton a solid C-, because it didn't look great, but he got the job done in the larger scheme of things. And I think that Cooper was a B+ because he again, didn't have to do too much, but everything he did, he had to do a lot, but as far as difficulty in assignment, wasn't terribly hard, but he definitely executed it with aplomb.
Cooper Beebe B plus, kind of. I like it, like the little play on words there. Later, let's talk about some other players that had strong first impressions with the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1. We will get to DeMarvion Overshown next. This episode is brought to you by Hims. Men, when we're leaving the house, it's phone, wallet, keys, and how's my hair look? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you might not be so confident when you step outside your door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all from the comfort of your couch. They offer personalized chewables, oral sprays, and serum treatment options so that you can find what works best for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/LockedOnNFL. That is hims.com/LockedOnNFL for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/LockedOnNFL. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription productions require online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. It's here. It's 2 shows every single day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Lena, let's talk about some first impressions. I want to start with DeMarvion Overshown, who had a pretty strong game on Sunday.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, we were talking about the fact that he's not listed as a starter on the PR depth chart that they released before these games, right? And I feel like he probably is a starter, especially after what we saw week 1. He was a revelation, man. It was incredible. He showed not only the ability to kind of teleport when closing in pursuit, which is something that we kind of knew that he could do, but you saw him just being incredibly assignment sound, processing things incredibly quickly, getting outside, taking on blocks, not, getting blown off the ball despite being, somewhat of an undersized defender at times. And then just, the overall ability to see, to not have his eyes fooled by play action, to kind of remain assignment sound. There were just so many different times when we saw tight ends or running backs leaking out into the flat, or Watson trying to escape out of the pocket and to get outside, and the speed in which Overshown got to the ball carrier, whether it was a tight end catching the pass or Watson loading up the throw and not even having time to get his release off before Overshown went from one side of the closer linebacker to the opposite flat to tackle him for a 5-yard loss in a speed that was so quick. I actually thought that there were frames missing from my film. It was shocking. Like, like it reminded me, man, I'm going to get a lot of heat for this. It reminded me of Sean Lee in the sense that, like, when Sean Lee saw it, like, he wasn't always the best athlete, obviously, right? He was a very good athlete, but that wasn't what he was known for. But when Sean Lee saw it, like, the speed in which he got downhill and got, like, perfectly angled to the ball carrier, and then the ball carrier was on the ground instantly as soon as he got hit. It's that kind of thing where it's like Overshown's there and you're down and the play's over, and it's so fast that it's like it's really not like anything that the Cowboys have had at linebacker for quite a while.
I'm trying to think, who was the last linebacker that had this level of athleticism? Because honestly, I don't know. I mean, Marquise Bell had it, but it was in a different way.
It's different, right?
Because he was undersized, where Overshown's not undersized. And you saw that with the Watson sack, like it wasn't like he had to drag Watson down. Like he delivered a pop to Watson, right? Again, I was watching this game with a couple Browns fans, and one of the Browns said, like, what safety is that for Dallas? I'm like, oh, that's a linebacker actually for the Cowboys. So actually the linebacker that he kind of reminds me of is who was on the other side of the field, JOK for the Cleveland Browns. Like when they see it and they can fly to the football and they don't have to worry about other responsibilities, it's amazing.
It's not only just speed, but it's like, the force, the physics of the power that he arrives with, right? It's, the processing speed, the ability to get outside, just the way he's operating in space, and he's flying. I mean, he's flying around. Like even when he's not making tackles, there were times when you saw him get through the line of scrimmage, get to the backside pursuit, and then diving, like full on diving at guys in the backfield to try to get him down. Like he's just like this relentless like machine that is, again, when he sees it, he moves so fast that it's scary. I just want to point out overall the defense's ability to, despite having all this speed and this athleticism and the ability to pursue like that, I was really impressed with the ability of the defense to be patient and disciplined with play action and bootleg and that sort of thing. That's something that this team really has had problems with at times. So it was really good to see them kind of play with that level of discipline, and Overshown was a big part of that as well.
I think Overshown is going to have a massive role in this defense for Mike Zimmer. I mean, I love all the other players they have, but for this defense to be truly special and to be a difference maker when we get to the postseason, I think a lot of it relies on Overshown because they just don't really have another player on the roster like him that can fly, and they're going to need him in some of these big time matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were, he was one of several different players that I thought like had really big games throughout the really big game, yesterday.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit later about some of the secondary players.
Yeah, I want to save those guys because there's one guy that had an outstanding game that's not getting enough love, but we'll get to that.
Let's talk about Brandon Cooks real quick, because I thought that he had secretly a very good game. A couple different really big receptions. There were times when it felt like early on Dak and CD were hitting well, and then it felt like the Browns kind of started to focus on them a little bit. But I want to go back to that touchdown that Cooks got from Dak. That was just such a fun concept, that kind of smash slants concept, right? So they basically had all the three wide receivers to the left of the formation, with Cooks kind of not quite in a nasty split, just a little bit outside of a nasty split. So probably like 6 yards outside of the tackle. Right. And then the outside receivers both run quick slants inside, and that left Overshown. It left Cooks isolated on Juan Thornhill one-on-one. So that by the time that Cooks was able to put his foot down and break back outside, right, he was basically, by himself with a whole bunch of space to the back and to the outside of the field, right? So meanwhile, on the offensive line, they're basically on big protection, right? So that means an offensive lineman on a defensive lineman, right? And so Jordan Hicks was lined up just inside the B gap, and he was going to be coming. And there was just great communication you saw where Beebe and Zach Martin are telling, Beebe and Tyler Smith are telling Guyton, hey, you got to take the outside guy. Don't take the most immediate guy, because that's Dak's guy. So in those situations, when you're hot and you've got a linebacker and it's big on big, the quarterback is in charge of getting the throw out before the linebacker can get to him. So what Dak had to do was take the snap, confirm that Thornhill was one-on-one isolated with Cooks after he got out. Once he confirmed that the cornerbacks that were in man coverage on the wide receivers that were running slants were running with their man, and leaving that whole space back behind near the end zone completely unoccupied, Dak confirmed the safety, and then he just threw it to a spot. He just throws it to the open spot behind where the occupied safeties were, and allowed Cooks, right as soon as Cooks makes his first break to the outside, right, he throws the ball to a spot. Cooks gets under it, makes a catch, easy touchdown. But I love the design there. I love that everybody knew what they were doing. The offensive lineman played it out. Hey, this Hicks is coming, but Dak's got him. Dak knew exactly how long he had before he had to throw the ball, knew what he had to confirm, did it, threw it to a spot. touchdown. It was beautiful.
I think they ran that exact play against the Dolphins last year. And I think it was Brandon Cooks that scored the touchdown. Now, Cooks was more covered in that one. But yeah, it was an excellent play, excellent throw. Good job by Brandon Cooks locating the ball as well.
Any kind of corner route or deep over route that gets Cooks running across across horizontal, it's going to be successful, I feel like.
Two more players that I just wanted to mention really briefly before we move on. I thought Marshawn Nealon had a good game for rookie,
Yeah.
5 pressures. Still needs to work on some of his pass rush moves, but looks like he's going to be a competent defensive end right away in his rookie season. And then one more, my guy, Hunter Lipke, 20 snaps in this game, played fullback, played running back, caught 2 passes. I anticipate with the Jake Ferguson injury, he's going to get more snaps. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets more carries as well. So shout out to Hunter Lipke.
I hate you for stealing my guy. Obviously. Hunter played fantastic. Obviously, he's going to have a big role in this offense. That much has been clear so far. To go back to Nealon real quick, you mentioned the 6 pressures, but also played very well in the run game as well. Was stout and was holding up the edge. So overall, kudos to all these rookies. We'll talk about another big kudo here in a second, but kudos to all of these young players. They all played well.
All right, save the best for last. Let's talk about the Cowboys secondary coming out of week 1 next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. I've had Sunday Ticket for years. Absolutely love it. A Cowboy fan living in Pennsylvania. It's been required. Cannot recommend it enough. But I also can't recommend FanDuel enough. I absolutely love it. It's what I use to place all my bets going into the Sunday games. Cowboys 6.5-point favorites. If you're feeling like the Cowboys are going to get another win and start off 2-0, just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Everydayers, on tomorrow's show, we're going to answer your mailbag questions. On Thursday, we've got a crossover with Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints. And then Friday, we're previewing week 2, Saints at Cowboys. So make sure you tune in for all of those shows. But later, let's talk about the Cowboys secondary, because as well as all of the other units played in this game, I think pretty clearly that the secondary was the best group we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, and let's put some context into this too, because I think the context actually makes it even more impressive, right? This is a unit that more than really probably anybody else on this defense, and really, I would argue more than anyone else on this team, was going through the most transition, right? Because with the Zimmer defense, the biggest change that we were going to see, and the biggest change I feel like we have seen, is we've still seen Micah Parsons moving all over the front, right? We've still seen defensive ends and defensive tackles moving all up and down the line and playing different techniques. That's all very familiar for this defensive line, right? The linebackers, they're bigger. They're playing the situations very similarly. It's not too much of a schematic change for them, other than the coverage changes. For the biggest change, it's about the coverages that are happening on the back end, and that has an effect on the defensive backfield. On Sunday, there was an enormous uptick in the Cowboys' use of middle field open coverages. So that's coverages that feature 2 safeties on the back, as opposed to cover 1 or cover 3, where you have a post safety, a 1 safety back, and then another safety down to kind of help cover the run. And this is a kind of a shift towards more modern defenses. More defenses are going to more and more of these kind of cover 2, cover 4 looks. And for the Cowboys, they were operating a ton in cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. These are all middle of the field open coverages that feature at least 2 safeties back on, keeping everything in front of them. And what's the result? The Cowboys looked extremely comfortable. I mean, frankly, some of the best plays and the pass deflections came on, like Trayvon Diggs. They were trying to high-low Trayvon Diggs in a cover 4 situation, and he played it perfectly faked that he was going to get down into the flat, dropped back in, and was able to go up and knock a pass down. I think one of Carson's pass deflections was on a cover forward look as well. So this is all to say that the results that we're about to talk about with these guys, they come in the context of this defensive backfield having to play new coverages, new schemes that they completely different than what they did last year. So I think that that's really, really a strong sign. And then individually speaking, it's hard to overstate how good Kalen Carson was, right? Because I think, he didn't get an interception. He
could have 3 interceptions, 3 of them.
He could have easily had 3.
3 of them hit his hands.
I think that's that third one. I went back and watched it. I don't know that he could have gotten that one, but the other 2 he should have gotten, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that he got his hands on the ball so many times, the fact that, Cooper wasn't able to do anything, Judy wasn't able to do anything. That obviously goes to the defensive backs overall, but Carson's number is functioning as cornerback too at this point. Yeah. So look, we're going to talk about Jordan Lewis and Diggs, who both had incredible games, very incredible games, and deserve their flowers. But before we get over to them, let's talk about the Rook and how he had a very incredibly tough assignment. All these other guys are 1st and 3rd rounders. This guy's a 5th round pick from Wake Forest, and he went out there against Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy, 2 first-round Alabama wide receivers who have been in the league for a couple of years and didn't back down even a little bit. All the applause to Seatbelt, man. Just incredible game.
Yeah, and this might end up being a little bit of a blessing in disguise for Dallas, right? If Deron Bland can come back, let's say week 6, right? And he's fully healthy, and now Carson has all these snaps under his belt, you're just going to feel a lot better as we get into November, December, January football, that you can throw out multiple cornerbacks and not feel like you have a drop-off in play. But we're still a long ways away from that. But so far, so good for Kalen Carson. I want to talk about Jordan Lewis.
Yeah, man.
Wow. When we talked about earlier this offseason about who is going to be a good fit in Mike Zimmer's defense, Jordan Lewis came up. And I remember the conversation that we had with Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, where he was basically saying your slot corner is going to be one of the most important players in this defense. You need a smart corner that will tackle, that'll be aggressive. And that's Jordan Lewis. And to no surprise at all, he was fantastic on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, just a perfect fit for this with his skill set for what is going to be asked for him in this position. Look, we saw it all with him, right? The coverage, the game playing, game breaking, playmaking at times, the ability to be physical despite his kind of diminutive size. Like there was, several different times when they were throwing screens out wide, like bubble screens, and they had a wide receiver on Jordan Lewis, a bigger wide receiver than him. Right. And I think it was Cedric Tillman, if I'm not mistaken, on this one play. Yep. He basically used Cedric Tillman as a battering ram into the receiver to force him back inside to his defensive help for a tackle, and then threw Tillman down to the ground and stood over him and talked crap.
Well, by the way, awesome. Cedric Tillman, 6'3", 215 pounds, and Jordan Lewis ragdolled him.
And it looked like it. It looked like a guy that was 5'10", maybe 195 pounds, soaking wet, ragdolling a 220-pound, 6'3" wide receiver, and then trash talking him after he was done. Yeah. And then, just 3 or 4 other instances of making open field tackles, like on running backs and tight ends when they were isolated to get yak opportunities in the flat, and completely shutting down what probably would have been a first down 20-yard play on each case if Jordan Lewis had missed the tackle, but instead is a 3-yard play because Jordan Lewis makes a tackle right now as soon as the guy catches the ball. So people that are watching the tape, that are watching every single play and understand the kind of nuances of like football and why defenses work, right? Like you watch Jordan Lewis and it's just like, this is teaching tape for nickel backs, right? He's in position where he needs to be all the time. He's forcing the issue. He's not playing passive. He's taking the plays to the offense as opposed to, being reactive to what's happening. And it's really fun to watch, honestly.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to mention, the defensive backs, Donovan Wilson had like 2 hits where they were like the hardest clean hits I've seen in the NFL in a while. I think Donald's gonna like this Mike Zimmer's defense.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think he's another really good fit.
Yeah, him coming downhill from cover 2 for guys that are trying to run digs on the backside, like, man, good luck with that.
I mean,
Like,
he's gonna rack up some penalties, just to be clear. Like they're
for sure.
they're gonna happen. But I think as we get into the season and those hits start to accumulate, you might see some alligator arms across the
Yep.
middle.
Absolutely, for sure. And that's tough to measure, right? It's tough to measure how much heart your safety has taken out of a wide receiver, but it's definitely going to happen this year.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Make sure you listen to the Locked On NFL show, 2 shows a day, one with Tyler Rowland in the morning, one with Tony Wiggins in the afternoon. They do a fantastic job. Check them out. Go download our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can check us out on YouTube as well. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.